A frozen mummy is offering new insights into human history and geography.
In the icy grip of the Alps, a body frozen in time lay undisturbed for over 5,000 years. When hikers stumbled upon it, they had no idea they were uncovering a chilling story of survival, violence, and ancient mysteries. This was no ordinary discovery. It was the frozen remains of Ötzi the Iceman, a man whose final moments were marked by betrayal and a violent end. His preserved body would unravel secrets that would challenge everything we thought we knew about human history. What happened in those last hours, and what truths were hidden beneath the ice?
He's considered to be the oldest human mummy found intact, and scientists believe he died more than 5,000 years ago. Because of new DNA technology, they're reimagining what he actually looked like. Sina's Michael Holmes.
We're going to start with the man of the hour, Ötzi the Iceman.
High in the Alps, a remarkable discovery was made that would forever alter our understanding of human history. In 1991, two hikers, Erika and Helmut Simon, were trekking through a remote mountain pass in the Ural Alps, on the border between Austria and Italy. It was a crisp September day, and the air was thin as they navigated the harsh, unforgiving terrain. The late summer sun had softened the glacier's grip just enough to reveal something unexpected: a human body half exposed, still and eerie, frozen in time.
An arrowhead lodged deep in the Iceman's shoulder.
And then the question was, did the arrowhead kill him or not?
CT or CAT scans of the body, revealing Ötzi's internal anatomy in amazing detail, provided more clues.
We could reconstruct then the area where the arrow entered the body and disrupted a major artery of the left arm. If you are losing so much blood that maybe after 10 or 15 minutes you're dead. From this, we knew that he was killed by this arrow shot.
At first glance, they thought they had come across the remains of a recent climber who had tragically perished in the mountains. But as they ventured closer, it quickly became clear that this discovery was no ordinary find. The body wasn't wearing the typical synthetic fabrics or modern climbing gear one might expect. Instead, the figure was dressed in thick leather shoes, stuffed with grass for insulation, an ancient and practical method of staying warm. The hands clutched a copper axe, its distinctive greenish patina suggesting an age far beyond anything they had encountered before. What was most striking, however, was the preservation of the body. Unlike typical skeletal remains, the flesh had turned leathery and dark, yet it was remarkably intact. It was almost as if the body had been petrified, preserved by the freezing cold of the glacier for over 5,000 years. The skin's texture and condition defied the typical ravages of time, preserved by the ice and cold, creating a time capsule unlike anything ever seen before. The hikers immediately alerted local authorities, and helicopters were dispatched to transport experts and archaeologists to the site. What had initially seemed like a routine rescue turned into an archaeological investigation of unprecedented importance. The discovery quickly gained international attention, and as forensic analysis began, the world was stunned to learn that the body was over 5,000 years old. It belonged to a man from the Copper Age, a time long shrouded in mystery. The man who would come to be known as Ötzi, after the valley where he was found, was now one of the most significant archaeological finds in modern history. Ötzi was no mere relic of the past. He was a living window into a forgotten era. His body, tools, and blood held vital clues to a time long past, shedding light on human life during a pivotal moment in prehistory. But as scientists and archaeologists began their investigations, they quickly realized that Ötzi's story was not one of simple discovery. Beneath the intrigue surrounding his age and preservation, deeper mysteries began to emerge, suggesting that his life and death were far more complex than anyone had imagined. In the years that followed, Ötzi would reveal even more about his life, his lifestyle, and his final moments. But this discovery, which started as a mere chance encounter between hikers and an ancient body, was just the beginning of a long journey of unraveling the secrets of a man who had lived thousands of years ago in a world very different from our own. The mountain pass where Ötzi was discovered sits high in the Alps, a harsh and unforgiving environment. The air is thin, and the weather can shift quickly. It was, however, this very environment that helped preserve Ötzi's body. The freezing cold of the glacier played a crucial role in keeping his remains intact over millennia. The fact that Ötzi's body had been preserved so well was nothing short of miraculous. Unlike many other ancient bodies, which decay and degrade over time, Ötzi's body was protected by the ice, allowing scientists to study his physical features and the items he carried with him. What made the discovery even more extraordinary was the preservation of not just his body, but also his clothing and tools. Ötzi's clothing was made from materials that were carefully selected to survive in such a harsh environment. His leggings, crafted from goat hide, shielded him from the cold and rough terrain of the Alps. A cloak made from woven grass added an extra layer of insulation, while a bear skin cap kept his head warm. These garments were not made for fashion, they were functional, designed for survival in one of the toughest environments on Earth. Ötzi's tools were just as fascinating. He carried a copper axe, an advanced tool for the time. The axe was not just a utility, it was a sign of emerging metallurgy, a technology that would eventually revolutionize human civilization. He also carried a flint knife and a longbow, both finely crafted and showing a level of sophistication that suggested Ötzi was more than just a hunter. He was a craftsman, skilled in the tools of his trade, and well equipped to survive in the rugged and dangerous alpine environment. The discovery of Ötzi's tools and clothing provided crucial insight into life during the Copper Age. At the time, people were transitioning from a primarily hunter-gatherer lifestyle to one that included the use of metal tools and the domestication of animals. Ötzi's copper axe was a key piece of evidence in understanding the technological advancements of this period. The presence of such tools suggested that metallurgy was already an important part of life in the Alps, and Ötzi was likely a part of a society that was beginning to develop these new technologies. But Ötzi's story wasn't just one of technological advancement and survival in the mountains. The forensic analysis of his body uncovered a darker truth about his final moments. Far from being a peaceful death in the cold, Ötzi's last hours were marked by violence and struggle. Forensic evidence revealed that he had suffered injuries that suggested a violent end. His left hand bore a deep gash, evidence of a desperate act of self-defense. His ribs showed signs of bruising and possible fractures, suggesting he had been in a violent struggle. Most chilling of all was the discovery of an arrowhead lodged deep in his left shoulder. The arrow had severed a major artery, and Ötzi's death was ultimately caused by blood loss. This wasn't a random accident or a death from exposure to the elements. Ötzi had been attacked, and the evidence pointed to a deliberate act of violence. His body bore the marks of a struggle, and blood from 4 other individuals was found on his possessions. This suggested that Ötzi had not been alone in his final moments. Whether he was a victim of tribal conflict, betrayal, or some other form of violence, the answer remained elusive. But one thing was certain: Ötzi's death had not been natural, and it raised more questions than it answered. The discovery of Ötzi's body in the Alps sparked a worldwide fascination with the Iceman and the era in which he lived. Scientists and archaeologists worked tirelessly to uncover every possible detail about his life, his tools, his health, and his death. They found that Ötzi was not just a frozen relic of the past, he was a key that unlocked a window into human history, offering a glimpse into a time long forgotten. As more details were uncovered about Ötzi's life and death, it became clear that this discovery was one of the most significant archaeological finds of the modern era. It wasn't just the fact that Ötzi had been preserved for over 5,000 years that made him remarkable. It was the wealth of information that his remains provided about the Copper Age and the early days of human civilization. From his clothing and tools to his health and injuries, Ötzi's body told a story of survival, violence, and the complexities of life during a pivotal moment in prehistory. In the years to come, the mysteries of Ötzi's life and death would continue to unfold, as scientists and researchers dug deeper into his genetic makeup, his diet, and the circumstances surrounding his death. But for now, the discovery of Ötzi remained a fascinating and unique window into a forgotten past, one that raised as many questions as it answered, and which continues to captivate the imagination of historians, archaeologists, and the general public alike. At the time of his death, Ötzi was approximately 45 years old, which during the Copper Age was considered relatively old. Life expectancy at the time was far shorter, and reaching the age of 45 was an accomplishment in a world where survival was dependent on harsh environmental conditions, limited medical knowledge, and constant threats from nature and other human groups. Despite being no young man by the standards of the Copper Age, Ötzi's body indicated that he had lived a strong and resilient life. Forensic evidence showed that, although his body had been subjected to the wear and tear of living in the Alps, he was in good physical condition. His bones revealed strength and endurance, characteristics likely shaped by years of surviving in the tough alpine environment. Standing at just 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighing around 110 pounds, Ötzi might have appeared slight by modern standards, but his physicality told a different story. He had clearly been a man accustomed to enduring the physical demands of daily life in a challenging environment. His body suggested that he had likely spent much of his life traversing rough terrains, hunting and gathering, requiring a certain level of stamina and agility to survive. Ötzi's muscular build, though compact, was forged by necessity. The rigorous lifestyle that he had lived shaped his body into one that could withstand the cold, the long hikes, and the physical labor that came with living in such an unforgiving landscape. One of the most intriguing aspects of Ötzi's body was the 61 tattoos etched into his skin. These tattoos weren't ornamental or symbolic, as is often the case in more recent times. Instead, they appeared to be therapeutic marks, placed near joints and areas where Ötzi may have been suffering from pain or injury, particularly from arthritis. Scientists have theorized that these markings were an early form of acupuncture, or some kind of rudimentary medical treatment. The tattoos suggested that Ötzi was well aware of the physical toll his lifestyle was taking on his body. The markings were placed with intention, possibly by a healer or a skilled practitioner of medical traditions that were based on the resources available at the time. This evidence of early medical care offers a fascinating glimpse into the lives of people in the Copper Age, revealing that even at such an early point in human history, there was an understanding of the human body and ways to alleviate suffering. The clothing Ötzi wore further revealed much about his life and the resources that were available to him. His leggings were made from goat hide, designed to protect him from the cold and the rough terrain. The materials used in his clothing were not chosen for their beauty or ornamentation, but for their function. A simple but effective method of insulation, his shoes were made of thick leather and stuffed with grass. This ingenious way of insulating footwear helped keep his feet warm and dry during long journeys through the harsh alpine weather. A bearskin cap, designed to keep his head warm, and a cloak made from woven grass added layers of protection against the cold. Every piece of his clothing was meticulously crafted for survival, offering insight into the practical skills and resourcefulness that were necessary to thrive in such an environment. Ötzi's tools also provided a deeper understanding of his life. He carried a flint knife, a longbow, and a copper axe, all of which were significant for their time. The copper axe, in particular, was a remarkable find. It was not just a tool for survival, it was a symbol of the emerging use of metallurgy. Copper, being one of the first metals to be used by humans, was highly valuable in the Copper Age. The presence of a copper axe indicated that Ötzi was part of a society that was beginning to experiment with metalworking, a technological advance that would eventually lead to the development of even more sophisticated tools and weapons. The copper axe was not just a practical tool, it was a luxury item, expensive and not widely available to all members of society. This suggests that Ötzi may have been someone of significant status or importance, possibly a craftsman or a warrior, who had access to rare materials and advanced technology for the time. The presence of a flint knife and a longbow suggested that Ötzi was also a skilled hunter. The longbow, in particular, was a sophisticated weapon that required skill and precision to use effectively. It would have allowed Ötzi to hunt from a distance, an advantage in the rugged terrain of the Alps. The flint knife, with its sharp edge, would have been used for a variety of tasks, from preparing food to crafting tools. These weapons and tools, along with his clothing, paint a picture of a man who was not just a survivor but a skilled individual who knew how to make use of the resources around him. However, despite the sophisticated tools and clothing that Ötzi carried, forensic evidence revealed that his final moments were far from peaceful. Ötzi did not die of natural causes or from the cold, as one might expect in such a harsh environment. Instead, forensic analysis showed that he had suffered from a number of injuries, some of which suggested that his death was the result of violence. One of the most striking pieces of evidence was a deep gash on his left hand, indicating that Ötzi had likely been involved in a desperate act of self-defense. This injury, along with the bruising and possible fractures on his ribs, suggested that he had been involved in a violent struggle shortly before his death. Most chilling of all was the discovery of an arrowhead lodged deep in his left shoulder. This arrow had severed a major artery, and the wound was fatal. Ötzi's death was caused by blood loss from the arrow wound, and the evidence suggested that he had died alone, far from help, high in the mountains. The arrow wound indicated a deliberate act of violence, not an accident or a natural death. This raised the unsettling question of who had attacked Ötzi and why. Was he the victim of tribal conflict or some kind of ancient dispute? Was he a scapegoat or a casualty of some larger struggle? The answers to these questions remain elusive, but the forensic evidence makes it clear that Ötzi's death was not a peaceful one. He had been murdered. Adding to the mystery, blood from 4 other individuals was discovered on Ötzi's belongings, hinting that there were other people involved in the events leading to his death. Who were these individuals? Were they his attackers, or were they simply people who had been nearby during his final moments? The presence of multiple people's blood on his possessions suggests that Ötzi may have been involved in a larger conflict, one that may have led to his violent end. The discovery of these bloodstains raises more questions than it answers, and the mystery of Ötzi's death remains unsolved to this day. Ötzi's life and death offer a rare and fascinating window into the past. His body, tools, and clothing provide a snapshot of life during the Copper Age, a time when human society was beginning to transition from a nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle to one based on agriculture and metallurgy. The presence of advanced tools like the copper axe, as well as the evidence of early medical practices like the tattoos, reveals a society that was evolving in ways that we are only beginning to understand. However, Ötzi's violent death, the wounds on his body, and the evidence of a struggle suggest that life during this period was not easy. It was a time of hardship, conflict, and survival, and Ötzi's story is a testament to the harsh realities of life in the Copper Age. As scientists continue to study Ötzi's remains, more questions and mysteries will undoubtedly arise. But for now, the discovery of Ötzi offers us a glimpse into a time long past, shedding light on the lives of those who lived thousands of years ago. His story is a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the complexities of life in a world that was much harsher than the one we know today. For decades following the discovery of Ötzi, scientists and researchers have worked tirelessly to uncover the full story of his life and origins. His remarkably well-preserved body, frozen in time by the icy grip of the glacier, offered an invaluable opportunity to study a period of human history that had been largely shrouded in mystery. The preservation of his body allowed researchers to examine not only his physical remains, but also the contents of his stomach, the parasites living within him, and even the tools and materials he carried. These details began to offer a fascinating glimpse into life during the Copper Age and the harsh realities of survival in the Alps. One of the most intriguing aspects of the research surrounding Ötzi was the discovery of his diet. Through the analysis of his stomach contents, scientists were able to determine that his last meal consisted of dried ibex meat, a form of wild goat, along with cereal grains, particularly corn, wheat, and animal fat. This dietary combination provided a unique insight into the survival strategies of people living in the harsh alpine environment. It revealed a balance between hunting and the consumption of domesticated crops, suggesting that Ötzi's society was not entirely reliant on either hunting or agriculture, but had already begun to incorporate both into their daily lives. The presence of whipworm parasites in his intestines further shed light on the realities of health and hygiene during Ötzi's time. The discovery of these intestinal parasites was a clear indicator of the harsh living conditions people faced. The presence of parasites was not unusual in ancient times, as sanitation and hygiene were rudimentary at best, and many people lived in close proximity to animals. However, this finding provided further evidence that the Copper Age, despite the technological advances, was still a time of struggle and disease. It was a reminder that human beings have always faced challenges related to health and survival, and Ötzi's body, preserved for thousands of years, became a poignant testament to those challenges. While the discovery of Ötzi's diet and parasites provided important information about his life, it was the study of his DNA that truly captured the imagination of scientists and the public alike. For years, researchers had speculated about Ötzi's ancestry, trying to piece together the puzzle of his genetic origins. In 2012, after years of painstaking work, scientists successfully extracted and sequenced fragments of his ancient DNA. This achievement marked a significant milestone in the field of ancient DNA research, and it provided crucial new information about Ötzi's genetic makeup. The initial analysis of Ötzi's DNA revealed several surprising findings. One of the most striking revelations was that Ötzi had light skin and brown eyes. This was a significant departure from the assumptions that had been made based on his mummified remains, which had led many to believe he had pale skin and light eyes. The discovery of light skin and brown eyes challenged previous ideas about the physical characteristics of ancient Europeans. It suggested that people living in Europe during the Copper Age may have had a much more diverse range of physical traits than previously thought. More startling was the discovery of a genetic marker in Ötzi's DNA that was associated with Indo-European populations. This marker, which had previously been thought to appear in Europe centuries after Ötzi's time, raised the possibility that the migration of Indo-European peoples into Europe may have occurred much earlier than historians had previously believed. The presence of this genetic signature in Ötzi's DNA suggested that the movement of peoples across Europe was more complex than the traditional narrative had suggested, with populations potentially migrating and mixing much earlier than previously documented. This discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community, as it challenged long-held assumptions about prehistoric migration patterns. It suggested that Ötzi's ancestors may have been part of an early wave of migration that predated the more well-known Indo-European expansion. This revelation sparked excitement and debate among researchers, as it opened up new avenues of exploration into the genetic history of Europe and the movements of ancient peoples. However, as with many groundbreaking discoveries, this initial excitement was soon tempered by skepticism and caution. Critics of the study cautioned that the field of ancient DNA sequencing was still relatively new, and that contamination of samples was a known issue. The risk of modern DNA from researchers or environmental factors contaminating ancient samples was always a concern, and some questioned whether the findings could be relied upon. The scientific community was divided, with some experts proclaiming the results as groundbreaking, while others urged caution, suggesting that the sequencing data might not be as definitive as it appeared. In the years that followed, the methodology of ancient DNA research continued to improve, and advances in sequencing technology allowed for more precise and accurate results. In 2023, a team of geneticists from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology and URARC Research revisited Ötzi's DNA with fresh eyes and the most advanced tools available. Their goal was to sequence his entire genome using fragments of bone taken from his hip, an area less prone to contamination than other parts of his body. The process was painstaking and required great care to avoid contamination, as the ancient DNA fragments were often tiny, damaged, and highly fragile. When the new sequencing data was finally revealed, it shattered many of the earlier assumptions about Ötzi's genetic heritage. The hallmark genetic signature of Indo-European ancestry that had caused so much excitement was nowhere to be found. The earlier findings, it turned out, had been the result of contamination, possibly from modern DNA mingling with the ancient samples. This was a sobering moment for the scientific community, as it became clear that Ötzi's genetic story was far more complex than previously thought. The new data revealed that Ötzi's ancestry was more deeply rooted in Neolithic Anatolian farmers, the early agriculturalists who had migrated from what is now Turkey into Europe around 8,000 years ago. Over 92% of Ötzi's genetic makeup was traced back to these Anatolian farmers, who had brought agriculture and new technologies to Europe. This discovery was groundbreaking in its own right, as it suggested that Ötzi's ancestors had been part of one of the most important cultural and technological transformations in human history: the shift from nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyles to settled agricultural societies. In contrast, only 8% of Ötzi's genome came from the local hunter-gatherer populations who had lived in Europe before the arrival of this minority contribution highlighted the dramatic shift in the population dynamics of Europe during the Neolithic period. It suggested that Ötzi's ancestors had been part of an early wave of settlers who had remained isolated from the subsequent waves of migration and mixing that transformed the genetic landscape of Europe. This revelation also had significant implications for our understanding of prehistoric Europe. Ötzi's genetic makeup painted a picture of a population that had been genetically isolated for thousands of years, living in a relatively stable and self-contained community. This isolation meant that Ötzi's lineage had been largely untouched by the later migrations and genetic mixing that reshaped much of Europe's population. His genome was a rare snapshot of an ancient lineage that had survived in relative isolation, only to be gradually absorbed into the broader genetic pool as new groups arrived in Europe. What was even more unexpected was the discovery of Ötzi's closest living genetic relatives. While it might have been assumed that modern populations in Austria or northern Italy, the regions closest to where Ötzi was found, would share his lineage, the truth was far more surprising. Ötzi's closest genetic kin were found on the island of Sardinia in the Mediterranean. The Sardinians, known for their genetic uniqueness, trace much of their ancestry to the same Neolithic farmers who had migrated into Europe thousands of years ago. Because of their geographic isolation, the Sardinians had been able to preserve much of their ancient genetic heritage, avoiding the waves of population mixing that had swept through mainland Europe. This discovery painted a profound picture of human history, showing that Ötzi's lineage was not a direct ancestor of modern Europeans, but rather a nearly lost branch of humanity. His genes were a time capsule, preserving the genetic signature of a people who had lived in Europe long before the later waves of migration and cultural change. The Sardinians' connection to Ötzi's lineage provided a glimpse into the ancient past, offering a rare and unexpected connection between the past and the present. The revelations surrounding Ötzi's DNA have reshaped our understanding of prehistoric Europe, challenging long-held assumptions about migration, ancestry, and the roots of modern European. They have shown that the story of human history is far more complex and nuanced than we once thought, with ancient populations existing in isolation and carrying with them genetic legacies that would only be fully understood thousands of years later. The DNA analysis of Ötzi continues to be a source of fascination and debate, offering a deeper understanding of the forces that shaped human civilization and the complex interplay of genetics, migration, and culture throughout history. Ötzi's life and death are a reflection of the broader human experience, revealing both the remarkable resilience of our ancestors and the challenges they faced. The study of Ötzi's body, along with his tools and clothing, offered a rare and valuable glimpse into life in the Copper Age. But it was the discovery of his physical suffering, chronic illness, and violent death that truly illuminated the hardships of his time. Ötzi's body was far from perfect. His bones and joints showed signs of wear and tear, indicative of a life spent in constant physical labor. He had suffered from arthritis, which likely caused him significant pain and discomfort. His body was tattooed with 61 therapeutic marks, placed near joints that were likely affected by arthritis or other ailments. These tattoos were not decorative. They were likely an early form of medical treatment, designed to alleviate the pain caused by his condition. The tattoos suggest that Ötzi's society had some form of medical understanding, even if it was rudimentary by today's standards. In addition to arthritis, Ötzi's body bore the scars of other physical ailments. He had suffered from painful ulcers and gallstones, conditions that would have caused significant discomfort and suffering. His body had also been infected with Lyme disease, making him the oldest known human to have contracted this tick-borne illness. These diseases, along with the parasites found in his intestines, painted a picture of a man whose body was far from healthy. His physical suffering was compounded by the harsh conditions of the alpine environment, where survival depended on the ability to withstand both the physical and environmental challenges of the region. Despite these health challenges, Ötzi had managed to survive and thrive in the rugged terrain of the Alps for most of his life. His physical strength, endurance, and resourcefulness had allowed him to live well into his 40s, a significant achievement in a time when life expectancy was far lower. His diet, which included wild game and domesticated grains, would have provided him with the nutrients necessary for survival in such a harsh environment. His clothing and tools, crafted with remarkable skill, allowed him to withstand the cold and harsh conditions of the mountains, while his tattoos indicate that he sought out medical treatment to ease his physical suffering. However, Ötzi's final moments tell a different story. Forensic analysis of his injuries revealed that his death was the result of a violent attack. The arrowhead lodged in his shoulder was the most telling piece of evidence, showing that he'd been deliberately targeted. This was not a death from natural causes, nor was it an accident. Ötzi had been murdered. The discovery of blood from 4 other individuals on his belongings suggests that he was not alone at the time of his death, raising the possibility that he was either pursued or betrayed by others. The circumstances of Ötzi's death remain a mystery. Was he the victim of tribal conflict? Was he a scapegoat for some larger dispute? The forensic evidence offers no clear answers, but it does suggest that his death was part of a larger, more complex social context. The violent end of this seemingly ordinary man raises questions about the nature of relationships and conflict in the Copper Age. His story serves as a reminder that violence and betrayal are not modern phenomena, but have existed throughout human history. Ötzi's death, combined with the evidence of his chronic illness and physical suffering, paints a more complicated picture of life in the Copper Age. This was a time of significant technological and social change, but it was also a time marked by violence, disease, and hardship. Ötzi's body serves as a testament to the resilience of early humans, who survived in a world that was far more brutal and unforgiving than the one we know today. His life and death are a reminder that human history is not just a story of progress and triumph, but also one of struggle, suffering, and survival against the odds. The discovery of Ötzi has also provided valuable insights into the broader social and genetic landscape of prehistoric Europe. Through the study of his DNA, scientists have been able to trace his ancestry and uncover the complex migration patterns that shape the genetic makeup of modern Europe. Ötzi's genetic profile has revealed that he was part of a nearly lost lineage, one that survived in isolation in the Alpine valleys long after other populations had migrated and mixed across the continent. This genetic isolation may have contributed to some of the health issues Ötzi faced, as genetic bottlenecks can lead to an accumulation of harmful mutations. The lack of genetic diversity in his isolated community may have made them more vulnerable to diseases and other health problems. In a way, Ötzi's genetic makeup offers a glimpse into the fragility of human populations when they are cut off from the broader genetic pool. It is a reminder that isolation, while offering some degree of protection, can also lead to vulnerability when faced with new challenges. Ötzi's story is one of survival and suffering, a reminder of the complexities of life in the Copper Age. His body, preserved for thousands of years in the ice, offers a unique window into the past, revealing the physical and social realities of a time long gone. Through the study of his life and death, scientists have been able to uncover new insights into human history, shedding light on the struggles and triumphs of our distant ancestors. But Ötzi's story is also a cautionary tale, reminding us of the fragility of human existence and the ways in which violence, disease, and isolation can shape the course of history.